Volo bog began to form about 12,000 years ago when the Wisconsin Glacier receded from northeastern Illinois. Large blocks of ice broke away from the glacier and were buried in clay, sand, gravel, and boulders, collectively called glacial till, that washed out of the melting glacier. As the climate warmed, these blocks melted, forming depressions called kettle holes. Lakes, bogs, marshes, and other wetlands formed in the kettles. The original lake here was very poorly drained with steep banks. Due to the stagnancy, anaerobic, low oxygen conditions were created, causing slow, incomplete decomposition of organic debris forming peat. The poor drainage also caused the buildup of acids which further inhibited decomposition. About 6,000 years ago, the lake began to fill with organic sediments. Eventually, a floating mat of peat, supported by the roots of living plants, began to form and encroach upon the old glacier lake, which now is filling in from the bottom up and from the top down. The edge of a kettle. Notice the trees and shrubs extending to the left and right. These mark the edges of the old glacial land. The marsh moat beyond is the outer ring, still standing Volo bog. The wooden boardwalk will lead through this and 4 other unique vegetational communities. Passing from one community to the next is like walking backward in time. Cattail cafeteria. Cattails dominate the marshlands of northeastern Illinois. They provide cover and food for a great variety of wildlife. Muskrats eat the roots, leaves, and young shoots and build lodges with their leaves. Other plants of the marsh. Autumn is a time of propagation among the plant world. Look for different methods of seed dispersal: blowing cattail fuzz, exploding jewelweed, seed pods, tick seed, sunflower, whose seeds will tick to your clothing. Can you find others? Tall shrubs. Winterberry holly, the dominant plant in the tall shrub community, is so named due to the persistence of the berries after the leaves have fallen. It flowers in June. Dead trees and ancient ferns. The tamarack trees were drowned during times of high water. Living tamaracks lie ahead, growing on the floating mat that keeps them just moist enough but never too wet. Look for signs of life in the decaying wood. Look for ferns, descendants of tree-sized plants that were browsed upon by dinosaurs.
Tamaracks are unusual pines. They're deciduous. Every fall, their needles turn golden and drop into the peat soils, releasing tannic acid. Notice how the water is stained brown by these acids. Crush the fallen leaves in your hand and enjoy their aroma. Tamarack, aka eastern lark. The fact that these tamaracks are alive and well indicates that they are on the floating mat. Their shallow spreading roots receive a constant amount of soil moisture as the trees float up and down with the changing water levels. Tamaracks were valued by shipbuilders who used the trunk and the main root, which grows at a right angle to the trunk, as angles for the hulls. Sponginum moss carpets the ground here. Native American Indian moms took advantage of the absorptive properties of the dried moss, lining their cradle boards with it for a sort of diaper. Soldiers of early battles used sphagnum moss as a sterile field dressing, for the moss produces acids which inhibit bacteria. Without bacteria, dead things don't decompose. Carnivorous plants. Look for carnivorous pitcher plants. Their leaves are modified like pitchers to hold water. Insects are lured inside by glistening water within which they mistake for a meal of nectar. Instead, they become a meal themselves, trapped by the slippery leaf surface and down-pointing hairs inside. The dead insect decomposes, releasing nitrogen which is absorbed by the leaf. This adaptation helps the plant obtain nutrients that are not available from the poorly decomposed peat soils. Mushroom and lichens. Mushrooms add color to Volo bog, living on nutrients available near the surface of the bog on a decaying wood. Lichens are actually 2 organisms, a fungus and an algae, living in symbiosis, both benefit. The mushroom provides living structure for the algae that in turn provides nourishment for the fungus. Remember, Freddy fungus and Alice algae took a lichen. Lichens are believed to be an indicator of air quality, with the fluffier types tolerating less pollution. We don't have very fluffy lichens. The tamarack forest grades gradually into a low shrub community of bog birch, willows, poison, sumac, and young tamaracks. Open water and natural succession. This pond is all that remains of the old Kettle Lake that once covered about 58 acres. Over the past 6,000 years, it has been filling in with vegetation, peat, that is encroaching upon the middle. Today, Volo Bog is the only such peatland in Illinois to still have an open water center surrounded by floating soils. Eventually, even this will fill in. This is a natural process called succession. In nature, nothing stays the same for long. When is a bog not a bog? A true bog is mineral poor and receives water only from the sky. By this definition, Volo Bog does not qualify. Because some runoff does feed into the wetland basin from the surrounding hills, Volo Bog can be classified as a flood. Nature does not always fit neatly into our human-imposed categories. History book with a flexible cover. Within layers of peat lie grains of pollen preserved over the millennia by low oxygen/high acid, thus bacterial inhibiting soils of the bogs. In 1981, Dr. James King took a core samples of Volo Bog's soil deposits with identifying pollen from nearly 50 species. Some had been preserved for over 11,000 years. Many European bogs have revealed preserved human remains over 2,000 years old. In 1957, naturalist May Watts of Morton Arboretum called bogs history books with flexible covers. Wetland wildlife. Sit quietly for a while and watch. Listen for a splash of water where a muskrat or a mink swims. Migrating sandhill cranes may be heard trumpeting from huge kettles above while insects buzz nearby. Early boggers. As early as 10,000 years ago, people lived in northeastern Illinois. They probably settled along the Fox River and the Chino Lakes area. Volo Bog and other wetlands away from the big waterways would have been good hunting grounds and places to gather cattails, arrowhead roots, blueberries, and other edible plants. W.G. Waterman, an appropriate name, first described Volo Bog to the scientific community in 1920. Many scientists followed, including William Beecher, who first arrived to the outer edge of Volo Bog as a kid on a bicycle. Dr. Beecher's love of nature led him into the directorship of the Chicago Academy of Sciences. Nearby residents of Volo Bog used to hunt and collect blueberries for pies. Marsh moat/wet meadow. The open water in this area is the result of early attempts to control the water flow in and around Volo Bog. During wet years, the water is high and the wetland is a marshland mosaic of open water and emergent plants. In drier years, sedges and grasses cover the entire area like a meadow. Wildlife is often observed in this area. Here are just some of the animals whose sign are often seen. Occasionally, a quiet visitor gets lucky and sees an animal that is using the boardwalk for easy travel.
In the early 1900s, the area around Volo Bog was a dairy farm. Local folk tales tell of cows and horses disappearing. Could they have wandered out onto the floating soils and broken through, never to resurface? The farmer sold his land to a sportsman's club in the 1940s. Go-karts, skeet shooting, hunting, and fishing here in this excavated pond as well in the marsh moat were popular. None of this was a threat to the ecology of Volo Bog. In 1958, the newly formed Illinois chapter of the Nature Conservancy purchased Volo Bog. It was turned over to the University of Illinois for management. Many students from U of I and other colleges visited and studied Volo Bog. In 1970, following threats to Volo Bog from impending development, the state of Illinois took control of this treasure and designated it an Illinois Nature Preserve. 1973 saw the designation of Volo Bog as a national natural landmark. Today, the Illinois Department of Natural Resources manages Volo Bog to protect the unique ecosystems and its inhabitants for the knowledge and enjoyment of today's and future generations.